Hello and welcome to the program. This is Sunday Politics live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimberley here in Abuja. For a story that we've kept our tabs on, let me give you an update. The crisis over the local government administration in Osun State took a dramatic turn this week, marked by legal battles, political tension, and tragic violence. At least about 4 or 5 people lost their lives in clashes linked to the dispute between the ruling People's Democratic Party and the opposition, All Progressives Congress, APC, over the legality of the tenure of council officials. Following last year's court ruling that nullified the APC-led council elections conducted in 2022, the PDP-led state government scheduled fresh elections for these last Saturday, February 24, despite strong opposition. The Attorney General of the Federation, Mr. Lateef Fagbemi, SAN, in a legal advisory caution against the poll, warning it could violate existing court orders. However, the Osun State Independent Electoral Commission, OSIEC, insists the election will proceed as planned, setting the stage for a contentious and highly scrutinized process this weekend. Of course, we saw a court order on Friday that the election should hold and security agencies should conduct the election. Well, we saw the conduct of that election in spite of the Attorney General's legal advisory on the matter. And after that, when was also the announcement of the result and the winner. Eventually, what we saw earlier today is the official declaration and swearing in of those who were declared winner today in Osun State.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. Thank you. Thank you.
We will not pay you. People's welfare will continue to be our watchword. I urge you and your councillors to please stay away from the council secretariat to avoid any clash with those whom the police had aided to forcefully occupy the local government secretariats. And Osun State High Court had affirmed the vacancies in both the chairman and councillors' position in all of Osun State local government before your election on the 22nd of February 2025. We will rely on the judiciary to ensure a peaceful removal of those illegally occupying the local government secretariats.
That is the governor earlier today, Senator Ademola Adeleke. But the APC has been reacting to this. And a portion of what the APC says in a very long couch segment by Mr. Felix Moka, the APC national spokesperson. In that statement, APC said Governor Adeleke must remedy flagrant breach of his oath of office. And I quote a portion of what he said in that statement. It says, quote, "We urge Governor Adeleke to immediately end his illegal and anti-democratic push for fresh local government election and abide by the valid judgment of the Court of Appeal in the matter." Breaking news reports of the purported swearing in of newly elected local government officials by Governor Adeleke constitutes needless political provocation and a clear renewed threat to the peace and safety of lives in the state. We enjoin local government workers in Osun State to go about their duties peacefully and in line with the authority of the judicially reinstated chairman and councillors. Further, we call on the police and other security agencies to remain vigilant and prevent further breakdown of law and order in the state as may arise from Governor Adeleke's illegal and reckless actions. In keeping with the rule of law, it is our expectation that the federal government will make federal allocation for the local governments available only to democratically elected and judicially certified local government officials in Osun State. The people of Osun State deserve to live in peace and security. Governor Adeleke must quit his political infantilism and uphold peace and constitutional order in the state. End of quote. All right then, tonight my guest is one that has a very strong voice when it comes to issues of the state, national issues. He's always spoken out his mind. He's an entrepreneur, an industrialist, and of course, a very much, you can call him an elder statesman. So we'll be having conversation on several issues. But let me remind us of what happened earlier this week. Former military president Ibrahim Babangida provided his most detailed account yet of the annulment of the June 12, 1993 presidential election, a landmark event in Nigeria's democratic history that continues to spark debate decades later. For years, the circumstances surrounding the annulment have been shrouded in controversies, with various figures offering conflicting explanations. However, on Thursday, former head of state Babangida presented his own version of events in his autobiography, A Journey in Service, launched in Abuja. The book, reviewed by the former Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, provides fresh insight into the historic decision that halted Nigeria's democratic transition. It also marks the first time President Babangida unequivocally acknowledged that late Chief Moshood Kashimalu Olawale, popularly called MK Abiola, won the election and that he regretted his annulment. But let me allow you to first listen to former Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, the way he crafted how those who played some roles in the scheme of things in the past history, in the history of Nigeria and the present situation in the country, all of them gathered in one room. An interesting scenario, the way Professor Osinbajo painted it. Take a listen to him.
It was former President Babangida who played a key role in the coup that brought President Buhari to power in 1983, and later in another coup that removed him and brought Babangida himself into power. Yet today, President Buhari is represented at this occasion, celebrating the man who overthrew him and detained him for 3.5 years, his one-time old adversary, former President Babangida. And then, of course, there's a gentleman here who was an elected senator in 1992 in the course of Babangida's transition program. When Babangida annulled the 1993 election and General Abacha took over and dissolved the Senate, that senator tried to reconstitute the Senate in resistance to the dissolution. He was detained, charged to court. He escaped into exile. Today, he is also here to celebrate with his former tormentors. But as President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
In the most creative way, with the professor crafted his review of the autobiography. But interesting scenario playing out in the history of Nigeria's politics and democracy, and how the military, over the transition between the different coups that led to the Babangida junta. But then the man himself, Ibrahim Babangida, spoke, and his apology or the confession over the 1993 election came in this manner. Take a listen to him.
The tragic irony of history remains that the administration that devised a near-perfect electoral system and conducted those near-perfect elections could not complete the process. That accident of history is most regrettable. The nation is entitled to expect my impression of regret. As the leader of the military administration, I accept full responsibility for all decisions taken under my watch. and June 12 happened under my watch. Mistakes, oversights, and missteps happen in quick succession. But I say in my book, in all matters we acted in the supreme national interest so that Nigeria could survive. Our nation's march to democracy was interrupted, a fact that I deeply regret, but Nigeria survived, and democracy is still alive, a testament to our resilience and commitment to progress.
There are a lot of Nigerians who are witness to history. Either somehow they've forgotten, or they are being reminded, or their memory is being joggled by what we saw on Thursday, or perhaps in some manner the truth of the whole matter is being brought up, and those who disagree or those who agree, this is one of the essence of when you document event, that those who think that you may have altered the truth or the fact of the event, but that is the essence of documenting these kind of things. Well, let's speak with Mr. Atedo Peterside, who is the president and founder of the ANA Foundation and also the founder of the Stanbic IBTC Bank. He's live for us from Lagos. Mr. Peterside, it's a pleasure having you join us tonight on the program.
Thank you, sir. Good evening.
Thank you so much indeed. Let me begin the conversation tonight by getting to know your views. I can imagine where you were in the 1980, is it 83 coup, was it an 85 coup, and the transition between the Babangida, Abacha, the Shonekon, the Abdul Salami, the 1993 election, on the day that former head of state Babangida announced the annulment of the election. I can imagine where you were, and perhaps a presentation of IBB's autobiography will have made you reflect on those history, or perhaps the times in history. Give us an understanding of what you make of former head of state Babangida on his own account of what happened.
Yes, if you're asking me to give a reaction to what IBB said, I think I'll just make one little observation that perhaps he has written, this time he has written the book in some detail, but it's not the first time he has spoken about the events of June 12, 1993. And the interesting thing is that each time he speaks about events and he explains things, the story changes slightly. So if you say you take responsibility for something, people kind of respect that. But it's a little bit strange if you take responsibility in one breath, and then in your explanations, it sounds as if you're passing the buck to other people, a good number of them who have passed on. But I don't want us to focus too much on what IBB chose to write or what he chose to say at this time. I want us to focus more on that touchy subject of June 12th and why I think we should separate the book launch. You see, the book launch was a spectacle. And I think the whole way it was presented, hindsight, my personal opinion is that when you're touching a subject like that, we have to create a very somber occasion, eliminate, jokes, laughter, backslapping. It's almost like saying, I know it might sound like an extreme case. June 12th, many people lost their children. When some lost their parents. It's a serious thing. When you're discussing the Holocaust, there should be no laughter in the room. When you're discussing June 12th, it's a serious subject. And some of us were a little bit upset at the general mood and the banter and the laughter and so on. It made us feel for those who lost their parents or lost their parents or lost their child and so on. So I think let's be very careful, because we are, whether we like it or not, we have a responsibility to help to shape what is right and what is wrong, to try and help to influence today's youth whether we like it or not in terms of demography. Those of us who are above 65, I mean, I'm not yet 70, but those of us who are above 65 in Nigeria, we are less than 5%. So we don't matter. Those who matter are the young ones, who are by far the majority. We have to be careful what lessons we are sending to our children and grandchildren, so that hopefully they can help to build a greater country. Finally, I would say that on the issue of June 12th, and perhaps you were impressed, but I'm not impressed by coming out to admit something over 3 decades later. Definitely, it's okay if you need to get some ghosts off your back or something, but let it be very somber. Let it appear like an occasion for almost mourning. I think that's what upset a number of people. They may not be able to articulate it, but in all that banter, laughter, backslapping, fundraising, raising large sums of money at a time when many people are financially hard up announcing the figures, I think we just be a little bit careful. You don't handle the Holocaust that way. You don't handle the death of people's loved ones that way. So that's just a comment I wanted to put on the table first, Sharon.
If you look at if Ibrahim Babangida is owning up into what happened at the time, he said everything under his watch, it takes full responsibility. But are those who, even the Abacha family are already coming out and saying, he's thrown the father or Sonny Abacha under the bus, and it's easier to blame the dead. And Abiola, some of Abiola's family, children, associate, the likes of Femi Falana, Showore, and those who were on the street are already speaking. Those who were sent to exile, including President Bola Tinubu, who are supposed to be members of the cabinet, at a time when all of these issues happen, are already speaking up and saying, look, there are a lot of things to reflect on. There are those who say, look, it's in fact very interesting that Babangida is owning up. It's better than him not owning up. But in all of his conversation, is it more of bravery for you for him to have owned up? Were you expecting that kind of narrative from his book?
Let's be careful. I mean, one of my favorite sayings is a quote from Oscar Wilde when he says, look, every saint has a past. Every sinner has a future. I don't want you to get the impression that I'm saying that if somebody did something wrong, he cannot later on own up to it. That's why I keep emphasizing my concern is more like the mannerisms, the mood, the occasion, the banter, the laughter, to discuss a serious national event where people lost loved ones. That's what I'm rejecting first and foremost. So I don't want the focus to be, I disagree with some of the details, but I don't consider that to be my priority, more than sending the message that this is not the way we handle something as serious as that event in our history. That's not the kind of signal we should send to the younger ones. So I'm concerned about the spectacle. You see, we could have even, let's say if somebody wants to make a confession, isn't that meant to be a serious thing, showing penance, calmly, whatever? This was a bit of a jamboree, and that's what I think offended many people. So it is the style that surrounds, you can't remove the razzmatazz and the backslapping and all that's so jokes and all that surrounded something from the book itself. So I think let's be very careful. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with writing a book. You can write a book. If you want, you can rewrite it. You can change the story each time. That's his prerogative. But I just want to make it very clear that some of us take exception to the manner and style in which the whole event was conducted. Instead of being something to admit, show penance, a show of shame, it was almost a celebration of sorts. And so therefore it offended many people.
Let me ask you, Mr. Peterside, I imagine that you yourself, you probably are going to be a grandfather if you're not. I don't know. I think you are right now. And a lot is going to happen when the generation upon generation are moving, and history, a lot of times, a lot of people who had said so many things about those events in the life of when Ibrahim Babangida was head of state, perhaps one of the longest serving military head of state in Nigeria. One person that a lot of people thought was going to transit in becoming, removing the khaki in wearing the Babangida. But if you look at it this way, how does it come to you? How much of an irony is it for you? The jailer and the jailed at one time in history sitting in the same room. Those who were in the trenches and those who were being fought against, all of them sitting on the same table. And those who think that for whatever is what, the Nigeria, does it explain what the Nigeria political elitism looks like for you? What the caliber of people and the combination of people you saw in that room in the videos that are being circulated?
See, I'm not here to indict anybody, but I think that if you're not careful, the Nigerian elite would normalize, deceit or fraud and things like that. They will normalize all sorts of things, and that's why some people have to point out, listen, enough is enough. Let's draw a line somewhere. There's some things you cannot joke with. You can joke with all kinds of other things. So we have to draw a line somewhere. And the other thing I want to explain is that, by coincidence, very recently, we lost two very highly respected elder statesmen, people who helped to show example in terms of standing for the truth repeatedly. When you heard something from Chief Adebanjo, you could take it to the bank. When you heard something from Chief E.K. Clark, you could take it to the bank. Those two of them passed on very recently. I served on the national conference with both of them. We were together in Abuja, and that was in 2014. We were delegates. I was the federal government delegate. We were involved in exchanges, arguments, almost a whole year. So we have to be careful, because elderly statesmen like that, who helped to set the right values for some of our youngsters in terms of standing for something, always telling the truth and so on, they've passed on. We have to make sure that a different group of elders also appear to fill that vacuum, who will stand for the truth, tell the same story the same way, tell the whole truth that will set them free. Because at the end of the day, it's a struggle for the soul of a nation. In many countries, people say it's the intelligentsia who influence everything and influence people and set the way. Even June 12th, when IBB annulled that election, that was the first time we had mobile phones. I voted on my street in Victoria Island. We knew the results. The results had come all over the country except for, I think, Taraba State. So I was a baby then. I was in my 30s. So I knew what happened. And I was among the first people that came out after the annulment to say, you can't do this. And went public, newspapers and all. Interestingly, one of the articles I wrote then, and I'd never heard anybody use the expression, I sat down in my house because then there was no internet, and I called it the ghost of June 12th. And what I was writing then was that June 12th will be like a ghost, and it will haunt some people forever. Interestingly, since then, I've seen the expression, because I even tried to look for the internet, whether somebody had posted that article. I couldn't find it. But I saw that many people had been referring to the ghost of June 12th. And I think what we saw also playing out on Thursday was the ghost of June 12th haunting some people. And it's still haunting them, unfortunately.
In all of these conversations, something is fundamental, that there is a value that either somebody did something wrong or somebody something right. The values of the June 12 election still stand as a beacon. And today in Nigeria, we still make reference to June 12 as perhaps Nigeria's freest and fairest election in history. Is there any lesson? I mean, because the IBB book is not the only event that has talked about the June 12 election, but it does come at a point also that we need to reflect on our electoral integrity. Mr. Peterside, can you, what's your view about the state of our electoral system in Nigeria, and perhaps any lesson that can be drawn from the June 12 election based on what is going on right now?
Well, yes, I'm an advocate of electoral reform. Yes, June 12th appeared like a free and fair election. Interestingly, we went backwards after that. Some of the elections we had, including 2003, 2007 elections, were an outright sham. Then more recently, INEC conducted the elections credibly, up to Osun State governorship elections. And then after that, INEC more or less went rogue. Started having this issue of, as they're collating, they will claim there was a glitch, and then people will take result sheets. My source is INEC Idol. I've shown it on TV before. It's still there today. Altering results anyhow. And related, jumping up everything, coming out with results that people understand. If this process was clean and fair, why always a glitch? It happened in those states. I don't want to go into details, but it's sad for a nation that over 3 decades ago we had a free and fair election, and yet today INEC appears to have gone rogue. Actually, I'm indicting INEC based on the data that they have on their own IREV, which is a platform for the public to go and look at polling unit result sheets. Look at the nonsense they post now with confidence, knowing that it doesn't matter. And they believe that, after all, if you don't like it, go to court. And the judiciary will probably, they hope, whoever thinks that the powers that be, embarrass them. In a serious country, if you posted those kind of results on an INEC IREV, some people will be prosecuted. Perhaps even the INEC chairman may have to resign. But unfortunately, we have a situation where, you see, and let me be very fair, there's some decency in INEC. We're of 200 million people. There's no organization that you won't find a combination of the good, the bad, and the ugly. An organization goes rogue when those at the top have lost the plot. There are some good ones in INEC at the bottom, and they are frustrated. We have to clean that place up and also put in place electoral reform. INEC has too many powers, including the power to decide who they wish to disenfranchise via this less PVC that we don't even need. So there's a lot we have to do to unpack. So if we need to learn from the lessons of June 12, it includes how can a country that in 1993 could conduct free and fair elections, when that was the first election with mobile phones, we used them, we communicated, came up with credible results. Then over 3 decades later, with improvement, computerization and everything, we are now down to the crude level of people sitting down and altering result sheets and posting them on INEC IREV. So in 3 decades, we've gone back. We have gone backwards. We have replaced a credible NEC at the time they called it with an INEC today that has gone rogue. The responsibility is that of President Tinubu to make sure that he leaves a legacy that includes electoral reform.
In what shape and color? In what shape and color would the electoral reform come? What would you be advising specifically when we talk about electoral reforms? Because that term could be very wide-ranging.
But it's like saying we all know what is right and what is wrong. We know what transpired in the Osun elections governorship. And I'm praising INEC for the way it was conducted. I went on INEC IREV, you could see all the results, polling unit by polling unit, the parties signed, they did the collation, they gave the total. By 6 p.m. or was it 7 p.m. of the same day we voted, we all knew the results. So we know how to do it. Then we started getting into this game of the Electoral Act doesn't actually say that you must upload the results. It's not compulsory you do this, it's not compulsory you do that. So we started backsliding. Perhaps because the Osun election, the Osun governorship went the way it did, and APC lost, PDP won. So perhaps some people swore that never again. So we now have to go through this situation of investing so much in INEC, giving them all the equipment, which on the day they will sabotage and take us back to manual collation, altering result sheets, and then announce a result that does not make any sense. You can look at the Edo State election. It's posted by INEC, the public documents. I drew attention and put on my Twitter page of polling units where the total number of votes cast was more than the voters who were accredited. That's a disgrace. So let's know that we know what is wrong. Let's not pretend that we don't know. It's because we don't want to do it. All over Africa, some countries are improving the electoral system. Nigeria has to join that bandwagon. Because if you're not careful, the signal we've sent now is that elections in Nigeria, the next election that's coming, everybody go and get your thugs. This last election, we know what happened in some places. Go and get your thugs. Not only will some voters be disenfranchised first by INEC, making sure they don't get their PVCs, then even when you want to go and vote on the polling on the day of the election, some thugs will buy you from getting to the place, sometimes based on where they think you're from in the country, whether you're an indigene or not. It will become a case of free-for-all. People will be exchanging bullets and fighting and all that. Because you know that, hey, at the end of the day, it's not an honest endeavor. It's about who can grab and manipulate and declare themselves winner. And that's why I made a comment once before. I'm a Democrat at heart. If you are not have credible elections, and just snatch something and say they have won in this state or the other state, let me ask you a question. How is that really better than military rule? Some civilian bandits grab something and pronounce themselves winner. For military rule, some soldiers come together and pronounce themselves your ruler. What is the difference? Let's be honest to ourselves. The only difference is if the one was democratic and our votes would counted and there was credibility in the process and in the results. So it's for the nation to choose. We can decide to continue like this, where people now know the next election, I think, is coming in one of these states. Anambra is coming, other states are coming, where people can now decide, go and hire all the thugs, go and do this, go and do the other, hijack everything, manipulate, make sure there's a glitch, INEC will stop collating, they will go on a break, the wonderful results will come out. Come on, let's get serious as a country.
Let's take a breather, Mr. Peterside. And when we come back, much more to talk about on the state of our election, judiciary, and in fact, the state of our economy. So much more after this break, everyone. Join us again. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us on the program. We've been speaking with Mr. Atedo Peterside, who is a founder of ANAB Foundation, equally also founded Stanbic IBTC. Thank you so much, Mr. Peterside, for your time tonight. Let me ask you this. There are those who are of the opinion that fundamental to our electoral reforms will be how we can reduce human interface. That way you can be able to reduce the possibility of corruption. On one hand, there's that argument. On the other hand is the argument of appointment of those who head INEC from the top level. So I'm talking about the board of INEC, from the INEC chairman to the national commissioners, and also the resident electoral commissioners across the state. Yeah, there might be bad eggs who are not senior officers who are doing the bidding of politicians, rigging in INEC for politicians. That is an institutional problem which INEC need to seek to reform. And you see what happened in the case instituted by Mr. Mike, the former resident electoral commissioner in Cross River in Akwa Ibom, until we saw a professor being indicted by the court for electoral fraud. There are those who believe that not until we stop political appointment as enshrined in the Constitution of those who head our electoral institution, we are still joking about electoral reforms. What is your view on that?
Yeah, you see, look, to have credible elections, you need good systems and good people. The point I'm trying to make is that we have had some credible elections, so let's not pretend as if it's something that is completely beyond us. I mentioned Osun State governorship election. Even on the, I mean, as an example, which was quite recent, was it 2 years ago, something like that. So the issue is that we know the correct thing to do if we want to do it. So your question is that, are we deliberately putting rotten eggs in INEC so that on election day, the ruling party candidates who know they are not popular can rely on these rotten eggs to go out there and bastardize the system, corrupt the whole processes, and ensure that the election is not free and fair? Now, that is the problem that the opposition parties should make a big issue and put on the table of President Tinubu. Electoral reform is not something that the president will chase you and come and give you. You've got to be the ones to pile the pressure. We were lucky in this country that when President Yar'Adua was president, we had a situation where a sitting president was so ashamed by the elections that produced him and Goodluck Jonathan in 2007 that when he became president, he decided he was going to try and clean up the process and bring in some serious reform, because he was embarrassed by the election that produced him. That is rare. Usually in most other countries around the world, and in Africa in particular, it's opposition parties that pile the pressure. They come together and pile pressure on the government. See, because when you think about it, you're just going to have a situation where people go out, it doesn't matter what the voters do, you alter result sheets, announce a result. Then it's similar to what the old quote about Stalin, that the people who decide is not the voters, but those who write the result sheets. So it's for the opposition parties to put that pressure, put that as the priority, and say, hang on a second. We are not just going to continue with this same old nonsense. We have to sit down and work together. And then the government of the day can either tell them to go to hell, we will continue. Then we know who the enemy is. But I think we should be careful not to make it too easy for a ruling party in Africa to just sit down there and have tainted elections indefinitely. That's not what you wish for your children, is it? And let's not make it seem as if the technology is so advanced. We have the technology. I spent a fortune on technology, which they refuse to use. And then we have courts that will say that it's okay for a government agency to put out rules and say this is how we will conduct something. And on the day they can violate their own rules and it's all right. So apart from the electoral reform, we also have to discuss the judiciary. Because you need the two.
Now,
to achieve the desired outcome.
So, but where do we start from? That's a big question. I know the National Assembly is doing its own bid in electoral reforms, but the question is that, Mr. Peterside, are you asking, will be suggesting to President Tinubu tonight to begin a process from the executive point of view of these electoral reforms? Because you said earlier that it should leave a legacy of a strong electoral system.
That is my advice to him. He can decide to do it, he can decide to reject it, but guess what? When you talk about legacy, it's about what do you remember for. Is it just occupying Aso Rock and hardship and pain? Do you want to be remembered that, okay, if I, through a system, might I was elected, and all that, I'm going to make that my legacy. I'm going to kill this before I leave. So that when people discuss and who transformed the electoral process, he will get the credit. I said this people can help him by piling pressure. Sometimes the pressure makes you decide, okay, okay, this guy is at a point. I want to be known as the person, in spite of everything else. I made the required changes to ensure that me, or even for me as well, and my party, this nonsense has to stop. We have to leave Nigeria better than we met it. That is a responsibility for every leader. You leave the institution you met better than when you got there. Here we're in danger now of successive governments leaving INEC worse than how they met it. So, I mean, it's not something that we can gloss over. And I hope that the opposition parties and everybody else, the media, the civil society and everybody, will bring it to the front burner.
It's definitely, it doesn't look like it's only the our electoral system that needs a reform. There are those who have also been advocating for judicial reform. And I was monitoring some of the things that you said when the case between Chief Afe Babalola and Mr. Dele Farotimi came up. Let me get your take on how that matter panned out. At some point, Chief Afe Babalola listened to some traditional rulers and said, I'm going to let go and I'm going to move past this one. But what is your view on what happened between the two men?
That's a good example of how pressure, public opinion, peer group pressure can lead to a better outcome. You know, personally, I was in Dubai when somebody sent me a tweet from Dele Farotimi. I think I still have it on Twitter page, where he said, he didn't name anybody, where he said some big men or somebody that were arranging for him to be abducted, or were taking him away for something like criminal, defamation or whatever else. In fact, he wasn't even sure at the time. It was very early in the day. And I thought, hang on a second, in the 21st century, are we not going to sit down and allow somebody to be abducted by police? Almost like sort of Gestapo, because he upset or annoyed. Let's even say he libeled some big rich man. Is that the kind of country we want? So nobody spoke to me before I was among the. I don't even heard anybody protest when I came out screaming that this does not make any sense. We can't allow this. And you see, Nigeria, we have to be very careful. People will sometimes think that, oh, it's okay because they are both Yorubas. Nonsense. If I reverse the same action and put different names, and let's say somebody from Nnewi was not happy with somebody from Lagos or from Oyo who is in Lagos, therefore accused him of something and came to Lagos to kidnap him and take him before judges in Nnewi. Some of the people who were saying it was all right for Dele will be screaming that we can't allow that. Since some of us don't change our principles or the way we look at issues based on who is involved, we look at it in terms of, hey, if you allow a system, I'm outspoken myself. Even this interview I'm doing with you, I didn't have to do it. You invited me, I agreed to come, I'm outspoken. So it doesn't mean that each time I say something that some people don't like, they can just decide that, oh, I defamed them criminally on service program, so they can kidnap me and take me to Zamfara. Because after all, in this interview, I've mentioned various parts of the country from Osun. If I mention Zamfara and offend somebody, is that the kind of country we want? So when so many of us came screaming, and of course we screamed because we said, hey, these obnoxious laws were put on the statute books by the British in those days. They used it to silence the natives. And also there's a responsibility. When you are a successful sector or private sector personality, and you have been blessed with phenomenal resources and all that, we don't expect, and I'm not talking about Afe now, I think generally, we don't expect to see you use that position or abuse that privilege to crush people who are not so fortunate financially and otherwise. That's why I said, will people be happy if I using my position and influence, send the police to go and grab anybody that offends me or because he said something against me. I'm abused every day on the internet. Even based on my comments on this IBB book launch, some people are abusing me, some young people are abusing me, some are praising me. So why would I want to now start talking about cyber stalking and all kinds of things, pressing charges? So of course, many of us condemned it. And if there was not that pressure, perhaps even the rulers who intervened, I might not have intervened. That's why I think it's important to speak out. When you think something is wrong, say it. And I'm grateful that in this particular case, Wider Council prevailed. And to me, what was the most obvious thing was done, which is that I even said it in my little tweet, I think, that if you pursue this fellow in this way, you actually defame yourself. Because, crossing it's not something to be proud of in the 21st century. The world has moved on. If you take somebody your size, people can be impressed. But you're taking on somebody that you have much resources, you can, the police, everybody can do your beck and call and coughing, taking here. The more you do those things, the more you evoke everybody's voice and turn up everybody. Many people get angry. But it's a lesson, Look, it doesn't matter how powerful you are, you've got to control yourself. You've got to be the one to decide that I'm not going to abuse my strength and crush whoever upsets me. Please, I'm not defending whatever Dele might have done or not done. I'm saying in the ordinary course of business, if Dele was taken to court for libel and they were in court arguing about libel, I will never get involved. It's when the police leapt in, when he was carried to Ekiti, when he was denied bail, when he was handcuffed, I said, we won't take it from anybody. We don't care how powerful you think you are.
Let me perhaps is on the issue of economy. I'd like us to anchor. I'd like to remind our viewers of what happened earlier in the week when the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics came out with the decision for a CPI rebasing, and that those index were reviewed. Let me remind you of what the Statistician General of the nation said when they made that decision public. Take a listen to him.
The inflation rate, 24.48%. Is it actually a fall in inflation rate? This is the new inflation rate based on the base year 2024. It is the actual inflation rate if we compare 2024 January to 2025 January. You can see that it's a short period, not like we are comparing with prices of 2009. So this figure is the actual. But when you say, does it mean that prices of goods and services in the market has come down? That is not what this figure is saying. This one is talking about the rate by which the prices are coming down. That's what it's measuring. But the actual price itself in the market is not what this one is talking about.
That is a fundamental change in the scenario, especially the indices and some of the parameters which form the Nigerian economy. But for someone like you, what is your own view about the rebasing? Are you okay with the base values, and are you okay with the decision, perhaps the handling of the economy generally?
The rebasing happens once in a while in most economies. But part of the problem we have here is that there's a trust deficit, in the sense that the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, first they changed how they compute on unemployment, and all of a sudden we realized that we are almost attaining full employment in Nigeria. Because if you take it, sometimes it's garbage in, garbage out. For unemployment, if you take a definition that says, if somebody is gainfully employed for 2 days in a month or 3 days in a month, then is fully employed. And of course, you will record full employment. I think we have to be careful. While I sympathize that there's a need to rebase and all that, and I was on the economic management team of Goodluck Jonathan when the GDP computation, GDP was rebased and all that. But there was credibility then. The head of the MBS had already established credibility. There was no trust deficit. People could at least listen. Here, I think we have to be careful because you cannot rush too many things at the same time. Okay, now they've done this one, so let's allow it to go, because if they've done it, they can't reverse it. And let's just hope that they keep it, they use the same measurements thereafter, in which case it will still capture fluctuations. But of course, initially, there is the shock that people suddenly heard that the inflation that they thought was about 30%, suddenly you say it's 24 because you have recomputed or you have decided to reconfigure how you go about it. So I would just appeal to them they should also focus on building that credibility. It was there before. There was a time when whatever MBA said, Nigerians believed, and they should be careful that they don't lose that. I'm not saying they must stay, but they should be careful they don't lose that. So for instance, I would advise them now to rush and also rebase GDP and suddenly tell us that the income has gone to the sky and all that. Just take it easy. Phase these things out, build confidence, let people build some credibility, and then you can talk about, and then also engage people in advance so that it doesn't seem like a shock every time, especially when the direction is clear. If we're doing these things, you're going to finish up telling us that we are better off than we think we are. So people say, yeah, give me a break. I'm still unemployed. I'm still hungry. But it's an academic argument. But let me end also on the economy by pointing out that there will be some areas where at least you believe the figures. Take the exchange rate. Whether we like it or not, the exchange rate has more or less at least stabilized around 1,500 naira to a dollar. That is a victory of sorts. It's a victory because it has brought some stability. People are not frightened. Nobody's rushing for dollars as if they will disappear tomorrow. It's important that those types of gains you consolidate and try and keep it that way for a while. Because when you succeed in keeping the exchange rate fairly stable, then you can go to the next phase eventually as inflationary expectations come down as well, because the exchange rate is also a part driver of the inflation rate. And if you're controlling your money supply, then you can slowly start bringing down interest rates as well later. So I think the journey to macro stability, we're not there yet, but at least if one or two important anchors are there, exchange rate looks stable for now. Let's pray they keep it that way. And they should not do too many things that make people lose confidence in what they're announcing and the methodology and all that. If there's some changes, don't make any more in a hurry. Report figures based on what we're used to, and let us all build confidence. And then carry everybody along and explain your next step if you have to make any more changes.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Atedo Peterside, for this conversation tonight. Mr. Atedo Peterside is the founder of Anna Foundation and the founder of Stanbic IBTC. Thank you so much indeed for the insight that you've given on these issues. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Appreciate it. That's our show for tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Akimale. I'll see you tomorrow, God willing. God bless Nigeria.